Okay, so we're recording. Let me pull this up. Hey everyone, my name is Whitney, and welcome back to an episode of Spastic Chatter. Spastic Chatter is a platform meant to feature those in the cerebral palsy community, and I get together weekly with individuals with CP like myself to have a kind of uncensored chat about what it's like to living with this type of disability. So for this episode, I have Cassaundra, and she is a social worker with CP. So we're going to hear about her work experiences and her life and how she lives with CP. So I will go ahead and let Cassaundra introduce herself. So take it away, Cassaundra.
Well, Whitney, thank you so much for having me on this podcast. I was so excited to connect with you and to learn that you are out here giving a voice to adults with cerebral palsy because, as you and I were talking about, there's little out there for us. As you said, I am a social worker. I have my master's degree in social work, and I currently work as a rehabilitation counselor. And so I assist other people with disabilities to gain employment skills and to learn what their own skills are and to kind of encourage them and empower them to if they want to, get back out in the workforce, because I think holistically it's so important for people with disabilities to be included in all areas of life. And I wanted to be a social worker. I've always loved people. And I've always loved making people live to do their absolute best in life that they can and to strive for their goals and their dreams. And so, but I'm finding that we all have challenges that we have to overcome. And so as a social worker, I can connect with my clients to share with them sometimes the experiences of my CP. I'm also legally blind, so that kind of adds another disability to it, but I've definitely noticed how in my adult life, CP has certainly impacted me in ways that I never imagined, and is as a social worker.
That's cool. We have something in common. Actually, my bachelor's degree is in rehab services. So we have something in common.
Oh, that's so cool.
And I have a master's in special ed, so we have that in common. Talking about your college years, can you go into detail about your college experience? Like, how was that like from a social experience and an educational experience? That's kind of open, but.
Oh, yeah, of course. So I attended Calvin College in my undergrad. It's now Calvin University. It's a Christian school here in Grand Rapids, Michigan. And when I was there, I was an English major because I wanted to be an author. So I did not discover.
We have so much in common because I started as a journalism major because I wanted to be a writer.
That's amazing. And you still can.
Oh. Yeah. Yeah. And I'm kind of doing it right now because I work for Able, so I was the content manager. But yeah, we have a lot in common.
It's wonderful.
Yeah.
I'm really excited about that. So
okay,
yeah, oh, that's okay. No, I love it. I love all these connections that we're making, Whitney. It's great. So, college was really good for me. I chose to go to Calvin because it's a smaller campus. I needed something that was easier to get around. Socially, I think I've always made friends kind of easily, and so I don't think it really impacted the way that my friendships were viewed. And I think in college, I recognized that I would get tired easily, and I recognized that I would have more spasms, maybe in my junior and senior year as I was getting into my 20s. But I always thought that the vision problem was going to be my biggest barrier. And I always thought that people's perceptions of my vision would be a really big barrier. And I very much struggled throughout college to kind of find my way and find my voice, because potential employers would have perceptions of me because of my white cane and my vision loss, and maybe because of the CP and how I walked with a bit of a gait, that they would think differently of me. But beyond that, college was a real sweet time for me, because Calvin had, for me at least, tremendous disability services. I had great advocates who worked with me. My professors were the best people I have ever met. And I think it was really helpful because, I do believe, as a Christian, I got to connect with people on a different level. I knew that my professors were praying for me, praying for other students. And I was just very, very fortunate while at Calvin. I think graduating from Calvin, and when I decided, what am I going to do next, I took a social work class at Calvin in my senior year. And then that was it. I was like, I am going to be a social worker. This is amazing. You can use so much of language, love of language and love of people, and using language and helping people connect their own stories in social work. There's such a big connection between story and the human experience and the narratives that people are living in, that I just saw that social work was a great practical career. But, I think coming out of Calvin, I had a gap year, they call it, where I had a break in between my bachelor's degree and master's degree.
Yeah.
And in that time, I think I learned a lot about just myself and who I wanted to be. And then going into graduate school was much more challenging, because I definitely was noticing the toll on my body. I was working full-time, taking night classes, using public transportation to get around because I can't drive, because my vision is too poor. And I was exhausted constantly, and I was getting sick constantly because of my immune system being poor. So cerebral palsy really became kind of the overarching disability in my life in my mid-20s when I was in graduate school, because the work that I was choosing to do as a grad student was so physically taxing. And that got to be very discouraging.
Yeah. I kind of, just to kind of sort of what you were saying, I agreed that college was a time where you find yourself that I grew up so much when I was going to college. I matured so much, and you were saying that there's why you were saying that employers about your white cane and
Yeah.
things like that. Well, I use a power chair, and there's no hiding that I have a disability. So I feel like job interviews were kind of a struggle, because I don't want to say that my disability was a hindrance, but it definitely played a part in the employer's perception of me, played a part in the job interview experience. I felt like I had to sell myself more because I had a disability. If that makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's really shitty sometimes to have to do that.
Exactly. How many? Because I also took a gap year from my bachelor's to my master's, and the reason I chose to go for my master's is because I wasn't finding employment with my bachelor's degree, so I wanted to open up a new lane and I felt like having more of an education would help me um, have better vocational experiences. How many how many job interviews did you have to go on before before you found uh, employment? Was it a lot or?
Um, it wasn't very many. I think in that gap year, the biggest thing that I can remember is I applied for a job out in Boston. I wanted to live in Boston so badly, so I applied for a job working as kind of a liaison between the teachers and the parents to kind of make sure that those connections were happening for the students. It was a very poor neighborhood, a really rough part of town, and I flew out there by myself. My parents said, if you want this, go chase it. It's your dream. So I got the money together. I flew out there. I booked the tickets, and I was determined to prove to myself and everyone that I could do this. And I got there, and it was an on-site interview, and the guy was about 26, and I was like 22, so we were around the same age, and he completely discriminated against me because he saw the white cane. In the phone interview, I had told him that I had cerebral palsy and that I was concerned about my fatigue, but I was willing to do what it took. Because I didn't know at the time, under the ADA, that you don't have to share your disability right away. I just figured I might as well tell him. But I didn't tell him about the blindness because I didn't think that was a huge problem. And he saw the white cane, and he was incredibly afraid, very questioning of my abilities. I didn't get the job, and that devastated me because I hadn't realized, Whitney, that I would face discrimination. I had been so used to college where I was getting my good grades and doing well based on my skill and my merit that I didn't think that my disabilities would ever enter the picture. And so I was very broken-hearted that summer. After that, I got a job at David's Bridal, being a wedding consultant, and that only lasted for 6 weeks. I quit in the middle of a shift, literally walked out in the middle of a shift, which I would not recommend people do, but I did, because it was such a physical job as far as carrying those huge bridal dresses and buttoning people into them and zipping people into them, and I didn't have the vision to do that or the fine motor skills. And the managers were not very supportive, and that was rough. So I got that job, but I eventually had to quit because I recognized that it wasn't a good fit for me because of my limitations. And then I worked retail for like 8 months, and that was fine. And then I got a secretary job at our Bureau of Services for Blind Persons. And so that was the job that I had throughout grad school. And then from there in grad school, I just kept making connections in the Grand Rapids disability community and was able to get jobs working at our local Center for Independent Living. That was my first job out of grad school. And now I've been working for the state as a rehab counselor for the last year and a half almost. And that's been good. And it was really because I just kept doing the stuff that I felt I had to do to get to the place where I wanted to be. But it was really rough at first, finding jobs that were not suited for me because I didn't recognize my own needs and the accommodations that I would need or my own limitations.
Yeah. I actually, getting out of graduating grad school, I got a job at an independent living center, and
Really?
I actually I've interned at an independent living center, and I've worked at one, but working at one only lasted like 6 months because I'm like where I'm at in Texas, it's not very big, so there's not that many resources for people with disabilities. Like the bus system is not very it's there, but it's not very dependable. And
Oh, that's
I
awful.
was having I was having I was having a lot of anxiety, and it was physically taxing. I didn't realize how physically taxing going to work, and like the mental like instability of anxiety, how it would affect me. So
Yeah.
by the time I got to work, because of the bus system, I was already fatigued because I like had to wait. Because I had to like wait, like I had to worry if the bus was gonna even pick me up or not. Um,
Yes.
and then like
Oh,
there was some other things that played into it, but I had to realize that um at that time, working working like at a physical location wasn't the best for me because of everything I mentioned. So I had to pick myself up and kind of, because I got depressed. I got depressed after that because I was like, I'm not gonna find anything to because like I was like, if I can't do this, then I'm not gonna find anything that I can actually do, and I want to be a productive member of society. So after that, I came across Able Thrive, and like I started as a volunteer writer, and then I worked my way up to a paid position, and I've made my living working from home, and
that's
I'm very lucky to have that. But you have to like, for other people with disabilities, you have to take your physical and mental health into account for like you like my advice would be to like not overwork yourself to prove that you're capable of doing it, if that makes sense.
absolutely. It's not worth it. I
No.
mean, I had to learn, you know, uh, which is so, it's so, one thing that I'm hoping that comes out of this coronavirus is that society overall will recognize that, yes, you can work from home. Yes, you can be a productive employee. Those are things that people with disabilities have wanted forever, and we've
Yeah.
constantly heard, no, you can't. That's not possible. That's too much. Well, now it's not too much. Now everyone's doing it.
Like I'm looking for I'm looking for I'm looking to for work right now, and remotely, and I type in remote work, and like there's like thousands of jobs that come for remote work right now because everybody is remote, and I have to like search through the ones that are actually like legit remote for good, because
Mhm.
right now all of the jobs are remote. Like so it's just it's kind of interesting that that in fact the jobs can be remote, but like like you were saying, the coronavirus has kind of proved that that those resources do exist if you want to put them in place. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Um. So what is a typical day at work for you? Do you want to walk us through that? Tell us about that. When you're not when you're
Sure.
not when you're not in quarantine with the coronavirus.
Yes. When it's not May of 2020, and
Yeah.
it's before all of this happened,
Yeah.
a typical day for me, I always say like starts pretty early because I have to take the paratransit to get to and from work. And like you said, it's exhausting. Like it's physically exhausting just to get on a bumpy bus, and because it's paratransit, you never know when you're going to get to your destination.
Yes.
At some point, you'll get there because they've got like half of the city that they're loading up on your bus.
Mm-hmm.
And so by that point, by the time I get to work, either I get to work super early and I'm there really early, or I get to work right on time or a little bit late. And by that point, it's been an hour and a half of me commuting to work, whereas I live like 15 minutes away.
Yeah.
So that is exhausting. That is mental labor that I've already put into my workday that people don't have to think about when they don't have a disability. And then typically it depends on the day. I go in, always grab my coffee and meet with clients quite often. We call them customers in my current job, but clients is the overall term that most social workers use. So that's the term that I prefer when I'm talking in broad social work terms. And, I meet with people one-on-one and we do kind of vocational counseling. And a lot of it comes down to, okay, what are your strengths? What are your abilities? What are some fears that you have? What has kept you from the workplace in the past? Let's really kind of dig into those things. And a lot of it, becomes therapeutic for them because I serve all sorts of people with disabilities. So I have some people with cerebral palsy on my caseload. I have autism, schizophrenia, severe depression, social anxiety, strokes, speech impediments, the whole gamut. And my clients range from literally age 18 to age 72. So I've got the entire lifespan of a worker that I'm working with. And a lot of it is just helping people feel connected and helping them to recognize their own strengths and then connecting them with the resources in the community. I have numbers and goals that I have to reach from a federal legislation standpoint, and that can get tricky because, working for the government I think is great. I'm very glad that I do, but I also think that those the barriers of bureaucracy that don't really take into account, that this finding a job may take longer for someone with paranoid schizophrenia. Maybe we should loosen our restrictions a little bit. And yeah, the numbers might look really bleak as far as how many people I'm successfully finding employment. But at the same time, the work that's being done is helping those people become empowered, where they might not find a job working with me this time around, but maybe in 5 years they'll have gained more skills and more awareness, and then they'll be able to come back. A lot of connecting folks with resources, working with job developers, helping them navigate the homeless shelter system, a lot of it is, I'm very much supposed to focus on vocational rehabilitation as my job. But as a social worker overall, I find that I can't ignore the other things that someone has going on. So I do try to connect them as much as I can with those resources.
That's cool. That's cool that you have that you're not just focused on the vocational part, on the vocational side, that you're focused on the other aspects as well. So that's very
Thank you.
That's very cool.
I always get, I'm always reminded, just Cassaundra, it's just vocational, focus on employment. And so I do, but I think I also, because social work is a bit different than rehab or as a profession. So I find myself very much being a social worker as much as I can in a rehab world.
Yeah, that's cool though. I like that because like we were kind of discussing, there's so much more to finding a job than just the vocational skills. There's so much more to it. Yeah, so I agree with you on that. I like that. Well, let me see the questions I brought up.
Sure.
We kind of covered everything I had. Do you have anything that you want to add let's put it this way. Do you have any advice for people that want that want to get out in the employment in the workforce, or that want to become a rehab counselor, anything like that?
Yeah, I think I do have some advice. I think as a social worker, I did some research when I was in grad school for my master's program in social work, and I was looking for resources for social workers who have disabilities, because social work has, a really high burnout rate. You're dealing with people's crises all the time. You really have to take care of yourself and your mental health so you can better help other people. And that's a general thing they teach in any kind of master's program or any kind of education program in the helping profession. But I really wanted to know what's out there for people with disabilities who want to be social workers, because I wasn't finding any resources. And the sad thing is, this was 5 years ago, so maybe it's gotten better. But at the time, there weren't really many resources, and there was this huge gap in the literature that said social workers are not addressing disability like they should, and people with disabilities are much more encouraged to go into voc rehab than social work, because voc rehab seems to have more resources, because voc rehab is much more disability focused. And so I really, thought, okay, well, that's discouraging. But I very much love being a social worker. I look at all the things that social workers can do. I think about my own career. I'm not sure if I'll be a rehab counselor for my entire career, but I know that as a social worker, I have the mobility of professionalism that I wouldn't necessarily have if I just stuck to a very finite role. And so I think my encouragement to people is, if you have cerebral palsy and you have a desire to help people, whether you want to go into therapy, doing like one-on-one counseling, like Cassie Davis did in that interview you had with her, or whether or not you want to go into special education, like yourself, or voc rehab, or to be a social worker, I love those type of professions. And I just would want to encourage people to recognize that you may be a trailblazer in what you're doing. You may be the only one that you know at the time who's gone through your program, and it may be really hard, and there may be times when you want to give up. But if you have a passion for it and the ability to do it, you can find ways to come around that. And you have to be, people with disabilities, we have to be advocates for ourselves. And I think that's what makes all of us, I think, in some way or another, natural for these helping professions where we can advocate with others, for others, because we know what it's like to face discrimination, to face these kind of struggles and hardships. So I would encourage people who want to get into this profession, who have disabilities, to say, use those disabilities and those experiences to your advantage, because the way that you advocate for yourself, you can finesse that and tweak that and use that tool to advocate with others, and you're going to be a much more powerful advocate, having lived in the trenches of some of this, dealing with Social Security disability, trying to figure out Medicaid. Those are things that social workers who don't have disabilities can talk about on an intellectual level of understanding it from afar. But if you've lived it, you're going to be a better practitioner to empathize with your clients and to fight for their rights.
Exactly. Preach. The whole time you were talking, I was over here shaking my head. Yep, totally. So that was some great advice.
Thank you.
Yeah. So thank you so much for reaching out and wanting to be a part of Spastic Chatter. Do you have where can people follow you? Do you have anywhere where they
can? So they can find me on Facebook. It's just Cassaundra Wolf, so Cassaundra, and then Wolf, like the animal, WOLF. And currently, my Facebook profile picture is a black and white photo of me and my husband on our wedding day. And they can also follow me on Instagram. It's a private account. It's just Cassaundra.wolf, but I'm more than happy to make it to accept them, if they send a message. On Instagram, I'm much more, my Instagram is much more fun. It's full of cat photos and vintage dresses and lipstick. And Facebook is kind of where I get more vocal about advocacy and my different passions. So I would love to connect with people. Really happy to.
And all of that will be in the description below. And again, thank you so much for doing this. And just to close out the episode, if anyone watching this or listening to this wants to be on an episode of Spastic Chatter, there is an email link in the description, and please feel free to reach out to me, and we'll get you on an episode. Thank
you so much, Whitney.
No problem. Thank you, and check back next week for an episode of Spastic Chatter. Bye.